other people. Sometimes people going through what you're going through. Well, I'm not other people.
Well, that's
Yep.
saying, of course not.
Yeah, the basic saying, of course
Not
not.
necessarily.
Yeah.
If God says no,
Yeah.
could say no, but I'm not other people still leaves it unanswered.
Okay, so my very favorite clinical expression that I use every time I get stuck, and actually I use it in regular conversation, so if you're having dinner with me tonight and I use it on you, it's because I'm stuck.
I gotta write this thing down.
My very favorite clinical statement is, say more about that. Right? So if somebody says something to me and I don't know how to read it, I'll say more. And usually, if they're defensive, they'll be increasingly defensive and come back at you, but it'll give you more information. Yeah, because what Victor just said is, of course not, is actually a no. But this is a deflection in some ways. It's a defensive deflection, but it's a deflection in some way. Yeah, so yeah, there's a couple different responses you can get to these questions, and you probably got a smattering of them in this room. One response is that a person might say, yes, I am thinking about suicide, and that's great because you've just saved a life. You've just stuck a spoke in the wheels of death and can get them help, and that's great news. So good, you have done that. The second thing a person can say is, no, I'm not thinking about suicide. And if they're telling you the truth, that's good, because now you don't have to worry about them anymore. You were worried, and now you don't have to worry, and it gives them a chance to talk about the thing that you noticed in them that made you think that there was a reason to have the conversation. You didn't ask it in a vacuum. You saw a person in a great deal of pain. And so it still gives them a chance to talk about their pain. And it's not uncommon for someone to say to me, no, I'm not thinking about suicide. Sometimes all I want to do is sleep, because when I sleep I don't feel, but I don't really think about suicide. And that's a kind of honest answer that I trust. And then it gives me a chance to say, so it is pretty tough right now, right? Say more about that, right? Or whatever. So that's good, because now they've had a chance to talk and you aren't worried anymore. A third thing that they can do is tell you no, but they're lying. And that actually, if I had to, on a pie graph, say what happens most often, that's probably the most common thing I get. Why that's good is because it gives you a chance to say to them, I'm so glad to hear it, glad to know that you're safe, but I'd like you to promise me, or I'd like to ask you, that if that ever changes and you do start to think about suicide, that I'll be the person you tell. And that is always my go-to response when people tell me no, and I think they're not telling me the truth. And I can't tell you the number of stories I have from other people and personal stories myself of people who answered in that way and later had a follow-up conversation. One woman asked the question, and she's a pastor, and it was at the back of the church, like at the end of a service, and she asked someone, and he said, oh my, no, I would never kill myself. I'm a good Southern Baptist. Yeah. And she said exactly what I said. Well, I'd like to ask if that ever changes, could I be the one you tell? A month later, he called her, he was drunk, good Southern Baptist. And he said, if I had a gun on me right now, I would kill myself. I had a conversation with a clergy person. I'm a church consultant when I'm not doing suicide prevention work, and there was a church that was in big trouble. Numbers were down, giving was down, they were blaming the pastor was being scapegoated, everybody was like saying that he was responsible for what was happening, and I said to him, has it gotten so bad that you've thought about suicide? And he said something really vague and general that I didn't trust, like, oh, hi. Oh, is it someone you know?
Yeah, he's a friend.
Okay. Should we give him a big giant hello? Okay. Hello, welcome. So he said, he gave me a general, like, oh, you know, I have some pills in the cupboard, and it crossed my mind real briefly, but I'm not thinking about, I would never do that. So, okay, I said, okay, if it ever, you know, if that changes, I would love to be the person you tell. And I handed him my business card. And he looked at the card. No, I handed him my business card. He said, okay, yeah. We talked for another 45 minutes. As I was walking out the door, I said to him, remember what I said. If you ever think about suicide, I want to be the person you tell. And so I reiterated that after some time. And he said, can I ask you a question? Is this a night or day number? I said, it is a night or day number. And he said, let me ask you another question. How'd you know I was lying before? So I sat back down. We spent 3 hours together. But that's the kind of thing that happens when you ask a person if they're thinking about suicide. Sometimes they're like a little blown back by it, right? Like, Lynn, what did you call it? Like, being really direct. Like,
yeah, I said I was thinking about killing yourself.
Yeah. You said something like, to me, like, you just got to get in there. Like, and in some ways, that's what it is to ask the question about suicide. You're just sort of going in for it. And people can be a little thrown off guard by it. Sometimes they're thrown off guard by it enough that they'll be honest when they might not have otherwise been. Sometimes they need a minute, and so they say no, and then after they think about it a while, they're ready to talk about it. So there is some kind of trajectory to these conversations. That's a third thing. A fourth thing that can happen is you ask the question and people get angry. Who do you think I am? Like, what? Why would you think that about me? If I've asked the question 300 times, I don't think I've ever had anyone angry at me. Now, I'm female and short, so I can get away with saying stuff that tall men can't get away with, maybe. I don't know, maybe they get mad, people get mad at them more often. But even if, what I guess I would say is that there are some things that are worth having people mad at you over. And suicide is one of them.